Hi guys, and welcome to our next in our climate change video lecture series on human impact. We're going to continue discussing how humans are impacting climate change. As always, I really hope you have your note sheet in front of you or you're side-by-siding me and typing in your notes as we go along. Also, remember you have the options of pausing me, slowing me down, rewinding me. You could speed me up slightly if you would like as you're watching this. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So our objective today is to explore how humans impact the global climate and how they can reduce their contribution of greenhouse gases. All right, so let's remember that we're talking about global warming leads to climate change. Now, yes, is there such a thing as global cooling? Yes, but that's not the trend we're seeing right now. Right now we're seeing that the global temperature is warming up. And yes, it's only by a degree or two, but remember we talked about last time that every small change has a big impact. You go from 31 to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, or go from -1 to 0 degrees Celsius, things are going to start melting, and that will have great impacts on many different locations around the world. So right now we're just seeing the trend that temperatures are rising. And remember that global climate change is big picture, guys. We're looking at the average change in the climate across the entire globe. Yes, temperatures change by 20 degrees, 30 degrees in a day here in Hayes. That's not what we're referring to. We're talking about the overall temperature in locations and how we're seeing that on the rise. And remember, everything that occurs in one part of the world can affect the rest of the world. Think of the world's ecosystem as a spider web. And if you just take a little piece of one part of the spider web, it's going to affect the rest of that spider web. You might not feel it right away, but it will have an impact. So what's happening at the polar ice caps can affect and will affect what's happening to us in Hayes, Kansas. And so this is something we need to at least be thinking about. And we'll talk about some of the impacts we have. They're good things, but maybe that means there's something else that we can do to maybe reduce our carbon footprint. So global average temperature combines and averages the temperatures all over the earth. Remember, we're looking at big picture here, guys. We're looking at, wow, these average trends showing temperatures going up, and it can lead to some of those things we talked about last time, change in weather patterns, ecosystems destroyed, and we just need to be aware of that. So we are going to talk about the anthropogenic, which means the man-made or human ways that we affect global climate change, but there's also ways that naturally things happen that affect climate, whether it cools it down or heats it up. So we're going to look at that. So even though climate change is mainly human caused by human activity, there are some things happening in the world that we can't control. They just happen naturally that have an effect, such as volcanic eruptions. Volcanic eruptions emit aerosols. That means a big cloud of ash, dust, sulfur dioxide, carbon into the air. Now, when you get really big clouds, it blocks solar radiation in the atmosphere, meaning the sun's rays can't get to the earth. So this can lead to a cooling effect that might occur near places that have volcanic eruptions. On the other side, it is putting pollutants in the air, which can also have problems. So you're seeing cooling effect, pollutants in the air here. Solar activity can change. As we talked about the sun, there's solar flares and things like that, solar wind. There can be a fluctuation of solar radiation. Also, we know that the earth rotates and it revolves. And depending on which side is facing the sun, we know that it might be slightly warmer or slightly cooler at those times. And because it's at a tilt, the earth is at a 23-degree tilt, that leads to also different seasonal fluctuations that occur. And then we know that the earth is moving. The crust sits on the mantle, and the mantle is made up of molten rock. And we know that that's a moving, it's like a lazy river of molten rock there. And that means that the crust is sitting on something moving, so those plates move. And sometimes those plates actually converge, and when they converge, they push on each other, and they create mountains. Well, this is a long-term thing. Obviously, mountains aren't being built overnight, but mountain building can actually remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which can lead to a cooling effect. Weathering and erosion also can help remove carbon from the atmosphere, but these are extremely long-term solutions, right? Long-term effects. A weathering erosion is when you break down rock and then move it. And that takes a very long time. And all that carbon eventually will settle in the ocean. Remember, we talked about the ocean is one of our largest carbon sinks. A lot of carbon gets stored away for thousands of years in the ocean. But that's very, very long term. And then the fact that the ocean moves. The ocean is full of currents, or like highways, and changes when, due to temperature, those currents can change. And it creates patterns called like El Nino or El Niña. And these can result in short-term climate fluctuations. In fact, when there's an El Nino system, some areas get tremendously harder winters. There's way more snow and it's way colder. Some places have very, very dry summers, so not a lot of rain because of these pushes, these El Nino and El Niña climate patterns. Excuse me. So let's talk about the anthropogenic, man-made causes of climate change. So how are humans contributing to climate change? What are we doing that's causing increases of greenhouse gases? Well, first, combustion of fossil fuels. Now, as I'm going to say many times throughout this, none of these things are inherently bad. The problem is we're not maintaining balance. It's all about what goes in needs to equal what's coming out. And the problem is we're out of whack here, and we just want to be careful. So we want to think, and we're not saying don't ever burn fossil fuels. Well, that would be ridiculous. We wouldn't have electricity. We wouldn't have cars. What we're saying is maybe there's certain steps we can take to maybe reduce our carbon footprint that helps even it out slightly. So here you can see in our graph here, these are all different types of fossil fuels that have led, and you can see over the last 200 years, this has greatly increased. And obviously there's more people on the planet. So more people is going to lead to more industrialization. A lot of third world countries moving to first world countries do a lot of industry. And one of the cool things I will show you is throughout this whole quarantine, it's been interesting to see the smog graphs. They actually take pictures of the smog over China and how while everyone's been quarantined, it's clear now. Some people in China are claiming they're hearing birds in their city for the very first time. People are able to breathe clean air. The canals in Venice are clear. So even though this is a horribly tragic time in our world right now, and we're going through some rough things, we're also seeing some bright spots. So it's interesting to note that, and I'll show you those graphs later. But you can see here, obviously, we're burning a lot more fossil fuels now than we were 200 years ago. Obviously, more people means more trash. And remember, we talked about it as trash decays and breaks down, it releases carbon dioxide in the air. So we'll think about ways that maybe we can reduce our trash. And deforestation, cutting down trees. This one's a big one because remember when we talked about the carbon cycle, we talked about there's all these ways to put carbon into the air. And yeah, a lot of these are very useful. Farming, combusting fossil fuels. But there really was only one or two major ways that CO2 got out, and that was photosynthesis. And only plants can do photosynthesis. So by cutting down trees, deforestation, we're removing a lot of the organisms that remove CO2 for us. So we keep putting it in, and then at the same time, we're cutting away the big players that remove it out. And so that's playing a big role in the increase of CO2 because we're removing those things, the big helpers that take CO2 out through photosynthesis. And so that's a big thing that is contributing to it. And agriculture. Once again, this is not a bad thing. We need food. We need to have plants grown and crops grown and farm animals. This is just something that is releasing more CO2, and that's okay. The problem is we just want to make sure that we are also finding ways to take it out, because a lot of these things are good things. We need these things. We just have to be aware of the fact that maybe there's something we can do in our lives that reduces how much we're putting out, or maybe find ways to maybe take some of it out. instead of putting more back in. So obviously, as intense human populations grow, as we get more and more people on this planet, it's going to impact climate. When population growth increases consumption of resources, we need land, we need food, we need water and air and fossil fuels and minerals. These are all things we need, and so a lot of that releases carbon dioxide into the air. We make more waste products, air and water pollutants, toxic materials, greenhouse gases. So these are all things we just need to be aware of. So when we take a look at human factors versus natural factors, it's very clear that human factors are contributing a lot more CO2 into our environment. Like I said, those things aren't inherently bad at all. And in fact, we need many of them. The issue is we're not necessarily focusing on, well, what are ways that we can take it out? And we just need to be more mindful of that. So what are some things you can do to reduce or slow down climate change? What are some things you can have control over? Well, you can use less fossil fuels. Maybe you turn off the lights when you're not using them. I constantly have to remind Sophia, are you in that room? No, turn off the light. Just be mindful of that. Maybe you're going to drive less and carpool. Maybe you're going to walk places. I know as the weather's getting nicer, I'm probably going to do a lot more walking. I might walk to the grocery store. One, I'm going to spend a lot less because I can't carry it all home, but I'm not going to use my car as much. Right now, obviously, our day-to-day life is drastically changed, and we are probably using a lot less. And that is not we want to get back to normal life, but right now, if we're driving less, you're helping, and that's a good thing. Use energy efficient appliances. This is probably more your parents' call than yours, but as you buy new appliances or need them, energy efficient ones are very useful. Help out our local farmers. Buying locally goods and local grown foods helps reduce your carbon footprint. You're getting it from the source, and that is extremely cool and extremely helpful to help with reducing your carbon footprint. And if you can, use different types of energy. I mean, if it's a nice day outside, instead of running the AC, open up some windows or doors if you can. Instead of turning lights on, open up the blinds. There's a lot of things that you can do. You don't necessarily have to put solar panels on your roof or anything like that, but you can find creative ways to maybe use less electricity and things like that. Recycle and reduce. You want to maybe not use as much trash, recycle. Hayes has a great recycling program. You just get some blue bags and you can recycle your cardboard and your paper and things like that. It's a great thing to help do. You can support change. Support your local farms. Like I said, that's a great way to reduce your footprint because you're getting from local. You urge others, convince your siblings they should be turning off the lights, if they're leaving a room. You can make that push. Even that one simple thing can have a great impact, guys. Even your small things can affect big things. So think about that. And then educate others. Just tell others, hey, let's walk today instead of drive to the park or something like that. Think about ways that you could do that instead. All the little things matter. And like I said, in climate change, guys, it's really about maintaining that balance. We want to make sure that we're finding ways to take it out and use it to balance out the ways we're putting it in. All right, so your assignment for today is to head over to Edpuzzle. I have the link that takes you to Edpuzzle on Canvas. Sign in and do the 13 misconceptions Edpuzzle. It's due April 24th at 11 p.m. So if you'd like to look real quick on our Canvas here, you have your link to Edpuzzle here. You'll click on it and hopefully you will see here how you're assigned. You're going to be doing the 13 misconceptions one. So it's there for you. I think it's about exactly 6 minutes long. So this isn't a long assignment at all. All right, guys. So that's that for right now. If you have any questions, please email me and I hope you have a great day.